you don't do research, you can't grow, because you can't go beyond where you are into, finding new things, new ways of doing things. So let's set up, research universities. Let's set up polytechnic universities, where they're inventing stuff.
Universities of technology, and shouldn't those ones be living up to their billing?
Have you been to some of those lately? I mean, they don't even. Some of the facilities they have are just a little beyond what some private secondary schools have in this country. So put the money there. Give them the equipment to work.
That's why I asked you if you were not worried that this is just about saving money and not exactly about improving the education. Because if you're saving money, for instance, without exactly a plan as to where to put that money, don't you see that there is a risk of losing all that you've saved?
Oh, I mean, and given our history, that is probably likely to happen. So first of all, there's the issue of get rid of, or set Jamb aside, get rid of NECO. That's a separate thing. I don't know that doing what they want to do with those organizations would hurt the ultimate consumer, the student. I don't think it will. Now, what they do with the money is a whole different ball game. And maybe what we should do is what Chamberlain's talked about. Is like, let's start screaming and yelling about, this is where we want you to put this money, and we will be watching you. And if it's not there, hopefully the media can help us, scream, that, you've taken this money and we don't see any improvements in our educational system. Yes, cut the budget for these organizations. Save this almost $1 trillion, but please put them in capital expenditures in the educational system. You pulled it from the educational system, put it back in the educational system, but build solid infrastructures for the future. And especially, I keep saying this, technology. I believe the use of technology will get rid of over 50% of corruption in this country if we introduce technology in almost every sphere, and especially in the educational sector. So let's invest in solid technology.
In what areas specifically? Yeah.
Now, what is stopping our Nigerian students being able to write code? Right out of even right out of high school. I know. I mean, Bill Gates started, right out of high school. What is stopping them from being able to develop programs and write code? And if we develop our students, who's going to start snatching them up as soon as we fix power? International organizations that need the manpower, the labor to, every time that Apple or Microsoft or the rest of them come up with different programs, there are people in the background, making changes constantly. Passionate about this stuff.
And the fear now is even, sorry to put in there, is when we finally scrap, collapse, and streamline, we'll have so many people doing nothing.
Exactly.
So unemployment.
Again, retrain them. Let's have don't just pull the rug from under them. This is what a lot of private companies would do. When they are cutting staff, they have an interview and they look at your skills and determine, okay, what else can you do? And what else do you have interest in? And they channel you to get trained in that area. So let's retrain them so that they can be useful in areas that need people.
Well, is it relevant at this time, since they're talking about this policy, and if we're to start writing code from high school, it means we have to take a look at the primary education, possibly elementary also.
Yes, sir.
So we have to restructure it from that point onwards.
Yes, sir. And I think I've said this over and over and over again. It must start from the cradle. These kids start going to school now at what age? 2, 2.5. We already put little backpacks on them and, they're trudging along going to school. From there, that's where we start. From the level of education that we give them from nursery 1. And so none of these, roadside sheds for our children. that, you know, there are no standards, nobody's watching what they're teaching these kids. Let's take our children's education seriously. We talk about...
Sorry, in other words, the primary education is very key here.
Very key. Very key.
So it makes the high school and the colleges or universities easier.
It does. When we move students along, we create problems for the next level. If you don't make sure that the students learn what they're supposed to learn in the elementary, when they go on to secondary, they're carrying a baggage of deficiency with them into the secondary school, which they will carry into university. And when you get into the university environment that is not even as solid as we would expect it to be, you know, from some of the what I've experienced, then we get graduates who are not employable. And so sometimes it's not about unemployment, it's about the employability of the graduates that we turn out. But it starts from primary school. And the key is who is teaching our children.
But can we achieve all that we really want if we still have that policy of admission based on the quota system, education in less developed states, your catchment area? Can we rise above the states we are with those?
It hasn't stopped, you know, other developed countries. Do you know that to get into a university, it would be easier for me if I was the first generation graduate in my family? There are quotas for such people in the United States. So first generation graduates will get in before someone like me who's had, you know, PhD holders in her family for donkey years. They do that. State consideration. If you're not from North Carolina, you don't have I mean, the North Carolinian has a better chance than somebody who's coming from the state of New York. So but it hasn't stopped them from, I think it's what we put our time into, what we put our money into. It's not, you know, who gets access. It's once they get access, what are we teaching them? What are they gaining from these institutions? What are they learning?
You know, what's the fault really with the teachers? Because you asked a question, who are those imparting knowledge onto the pupils? What kind of teachers do we have? How come we got this kind of crop of teachers who really can't give their all to the students?
Well, I think I've said we've had this conversation before on this show, and the teacher who got out of university can't find a job. Somebody says the state is hiring, you know, you want to put your name in, who knows? So you go in there, you never thought you were going to be a teacher. And it's not wrong to try to see if you can work there. I mean, a lot of people just serendipitously get into their careers. So it's possible to have people who get in and then they get passionate about it. But for the majority, it's just a job. And until we can find people who are passionate about education and put them in front of our students, people who will not stop at anything until the student learns what they're supposed to learn. I learned a lot. I think the best teacher I know is my sister. I mean, she's an elementary school teacher, and she spends her own private money buying gadgets or toys or whatever it's going to take for the students to learn. And if she teaches a concept and you don't get it, she makes a song out of it. And so once you can sing and clap about it, when you get to the examination hall, you can sing that song and you remember.
How does she manage? She doesn't get broke, because if you keep spending your money like that,
she's not worried about that.
Oh, okay.
She gets her satisfaction from, oh, you know, John finally learned this concept today. She comes home and she's ecstatic. So those are the kinds of people that we need. I mean, maybe not as much as she does, but I use her techniques even at the university level. So she's taught me a lot.
It will be interesting to see that replicated in other areas. Maybe Mark was spending our money on something else. But Just joking. Well, thank you for coming on this morning. We've been talking with Professor Abiola Awosika, who is the rector of Olawoye Awosika School of Innovative Studies, taking a look at government's plan to reorganize the public sector, but this time focusing on